Hey, gang, there's an argument to be had. Take this statement. Nebraska produces the greatest centers in college football.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, gang, how about you? DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Hope you're enjoying your Memorial weekend. Again, we're here even on those days to try to give you some content, just something away from the masses that you can talk about. Husker fans, you are appreciated. This is why we put this content out, to have these conversations. We want to thank our folks from Built Bar. Rico, tell them all about Built Bar.
Thanks, DP. Are you guys looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and the calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar on the market, Built. Now, if you're like me, you work out from time to time, you need something to eat after you work out that's really tasty and really healthy, then you guys need to get these Built bars. They also have Built Puffs. They're healthy, like I said, and they taste fantastic. Seriously, they're so good, you won't even know that they're good for you. What makes them so good? They've got 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I don't know how they do it, but they taste like a candy bar while also being good for you. Now, if you want to find them, you don't just have to go to Built.com. You can go to Walmart or Sam's Club, and they have all these amazing specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right, you go to your nearest Walmart, walk all the way to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built bars. And if you want a lot more, go to Sam's Club. Grab yourself the big old 13-bar box with all the hit flavors, Brownie Batter Puff and Churro Puff. You'll thank me later. Back to you, DP.
Thank you, Rico. We're talking about centers. And when you Nebraska and its legacy starts with style of play. And the mentality that's believed to be passed along as a part of a Nebraska gene pool, a football gene pool, toughness, Midwest tough, farmer tough. And you have to go back in time. And again, as we've had these discussions about the history of Nebraska and then the legacy of the people that we're talking about, sometimes we're getting names that we don't talk about much. And there's a reason why we don't talk about them much, because there's such an abundance of talent at the position. And what pops out to you think is Nebraska running back university. And there's a time where they were in that discussion. Is it kicker university? A time they were in that discussion. Linebacker, pressure, edge setters, pass rushers. But when you look through the actual elite numbers, that elite space of All-Americans, consensus, and unanimous, that the numbers pop a little bit because, and again, you're Husker Nation, you know your Huskers. So if I asked you how many centers were All-Americans at Nebraska, what's your list? What's the immediate list of names that pop to mind? And some will come to mind easily and some not so much. So I wanted to spend some time just going through some of these players. And again, these are great players. Look, if you're going to talk about great players at Nebraska, a couple of the names are legendary. But there was a run of centers that was pretty exceptional. So I want to start with that run of centers, a bulk of years that where after All-American after All-American after All-American, all came from Nebraska at the same position. To realize how difficult that is, to have a 9-year streak where every one of your centers is an All-American, that's an incredible run. It's an incredible run. And as we've done in these conversations, in order to figure out where you are, you have to figure out where you began and where you start. And so you go back into the history books, All-Americans at Nebraska. And in this case, we go all the way back to 1932. Lawrence Eli. Lawrence Eli in 1932. And I was trying to find uh, all of the information that you're going to need when you talk about All Americans. But as you go back to 1932, it's not that you're not getting today's social media content. You're not getting that feed. But from Grand Island, Nebraska, 6'1", 190 pounds, actually redshirted. Of course, remember back in 1932, freshmen weren't allowed to play. So he had to get his work done. But in All-America, he was all Big Six in 1931, 1932, was in the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame inductee in 1974. He captured the first All-America honor as a center for the Huskers. He is the pioneer. He is the one that set the standard. There had to be a first. In order for there to be a legacy of folks, there has to be a first. And Eli was the first. Now, he played under Coach Dana Bible, helped Nebraska to a 7-1-1 record, which included a Big Six conference title with a perfect 5-0 record. He also led it for the Huskers in 30-31. They were 8-2, and then 5-0 in conference as well. His sophomore year was the toughest year they had, but they were 4-3-2. So he had quite the run, 2 exceptional seasons as well. But Lawrence Eli is the first. And then you get how important it is to have somebody. And I'm amazed at how many of Nebraska's All-Americans were actually from Nebraska. And there's a way, maybe I'll do it on the break. But I think there's a breakdown that exists of the number of All-Americans at the University of Nebraska who are actually from Nebraska. And the number's pretty astounding. Again, I believe the number was 110 All-Americans. And to my thinking, over half of them are from Nebraska. Which, again, for a state with not that much, with that great of a number in population, those are pretty substantial numbers. 1932, Lawrence Eli, and then Charlie Brock in 1937. And that must have been a pretty good offensive line for the Huskers because Fred Shirey, Warren Alson, they had 3 All-Americans on the same offensive line. And you're talking about a group that when they were younger, had to produce. Like they produced big-time running game. So it starts to build up. And then you get to the legend. You get to one of the legends of Nebraska football. And one of the great nicknames, which is pretty, to have a nickname that carries through time. From Omaha South, Tommy Trainwreck Novak. 5'10", 206-pound center. Now, when we talk about pioneers, the first permanently retired jersey in Nebraska history, which is another, I'm going to ask my producer, Rico, to make a note for us to do an episode on the permanently retired jerseys at Nebraska. Because I don't know, as we sit here and speak, how many there are or who they are. But he was a two-way player for the Huskers in the late 1940s. Considered one of the legends in the first half of the 20th century. Tom Trainwreck Novak, one of the finest players in Nebraska history, all Big Six honors as a fullback and as a center. How about that? I'm not sure that combination can exist anymore. In 46 and 47, before moving full-time to center, where he was a 2-time All-Big Seven honoree in 1948 and 1949. In addition, he was also a linebacker. His toughness earned him a spot on Notre Dame's all-opponent team, despite the fact that Nebraska didn't play well against the Irish. After over a half century after his final game played at Nebraska, he's still all over the Husker record books, tied for third in school's all-time interception list with 11. 5 interceptions in the 1948 season was a school record for Nebraska linebackers. That's like that lets you know. Those numbers are crazy. Those are crazy numbers, and a great nickname, Tom Trainwreck Novak. Now we've talked over previous episodes about our next center. Because Rick Bonnes, and I was told that it was Bonnes. Bonnes. We had somebody reach out and shoot me the text and say, yeah, it's Bonnes. I'm like, okay. We'll put a pin there because I want to talk about him before we get into this full long list. There's still 8 for us to talk about in this episode of Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, welcome back to Locked On Huskers. Again, thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate content every day for Husker fans and Husker Nation. Greatly appreciate you. If you have not subscribed, please do so. We need you along for the ride for some of these conversations as we get to. We brought Rick Bonnes, who was an All-American center from Bellevue, Nebraska. Ring the bell. 6'4", 223 pounds at center. He was drafted number 3. No, actually, he was drafted in the 3rd round by the Raiders. First team All-American across the board. A first team All-Academic nominee as well. We've joked about hair. We'll do a full Huskers Greatest Afros episode. But Rick Bonnes, when you go back, and what I love about when you do the deep dive is it brings up just this collection of pictures. And Bonnes had fabulous hair. Fabulous hair. Like, it was like, this was, and you think 70s, mid-70s. So if you think of the mid-70s football player, back when they had the blazer, but they had the turtleneck in all of their pictures. And then he had this just mane of hair. Just fabulous mane of hair. So 2 times All-American in 74 and 75. 7th player in history to accomplish that. And there's that short list: Ed Weir, Wayne Malin, Rich Glover, Johnny Rodgers, Willie Harper, and Darryl White. And Darryl White is not one that we talk about enough, so we will do better along the way. Twice voted Nebraska's weightlifter of the year. All right. Coach Todd Osborne called him the finest center that Nebraska put on the field in the previous years. That was prior to somebody else that we're going to talk about. But he was All-State player and National Honor Society at Bellevue High School. So the numbers start to pile up that Nebraska is putting together quite the run of centers, and it's about to get super impressive. So in those 2 years, then you skip a year, and then Tom Davis jumps in at All-American in 1976. And as you go through the list, now you start to really kind of, Nebraska's onto something. Like there's something in the water, or there's something in the program, and they're starting to develop them. But no matter how you have the conversation about Nebraska centers, this next name if you're talking about center play in college football, you're talking about top-level center play. As a matter of fact, the award is named after him because the career that Dave Remington had at Nebraska, it's unrivaled. Folks know the story of Dave Remington. So as we shout it out, I mean, again, the setting the standard, this is how you know you're blue blood, that the names on the trophies that represent the best in college football carry Nebraska's name on them. And it's constant and it's consistent. And Dave Remington, the career that he had at Nebraska, is unrivaled. And Nebraska, I mean, we've still got a list of names to go through, and I'm just letting you know, there's some dudes on this list that I'm not sure anybody can stand on the top pedestal with him. We'll get to what would be the Mount Rushmore, but Bonnes being a 2-time unanimous All-American, Remington being a 2-time unanimous All-American, I think they feel pretty good in that place. Except when they say, how do you replace a legend? With another legend is what you do. And Nebraska had that in play. So after Remington, Mark Tranowitz in 1984, unanimous All-American. 1985, Bill Lewis, All-American. Then 1988, Jake Young, consensus All-American. Back-to-back years, 88 and 89. When you talk about all of this, the pipeline and all of the talent, Jake Young rarely gets discussed, people. He rarely gets discussed. And I felt so. Here's the thing. From Midland, Texas, 6'4", 270-pound Texan. He's also in the Nebraska Hall of Fame, part of NCAA Today's Top 6 Award. All of the award finalists that you can roll out and be considered for. But he was also an athlete, just an athlete. At 6'4", 270, to change the way the game was being played, and again, for him to choose Nebraska over Texas, Oklahoma, and to find his way to Lincoln, Nebraska was a big deal. That makes him the ninth Nebraska All-American center. Wow. Like 9. And it doesn't slow down. It doesn't slow down. You would think that, wow, okay, Nebraska, you had a good run. But Nebraska says, hold my corn cob. Not so fast. We're not really done. And then they bring 3 absolute studs to the center position. So we'll pause there and come back and close out with the last 3 Husker All-American centers. And when you have this discussion over the Mount Rushmore, it's a full room anyway. Business is about to pick up. Welcome back, gang. Thank you once again for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate this, that you spend the time hanging out with us and having these conversations. Again, I'm not necessarily here to have the answers, but if you're putting together your Mount Rushmore of centers for Nebraska, go ahead and put them in the comments. Let me know what you think. And again, we talked about Eli, Brock, Novak, Benass, Davis, Remington, Tranowitz, Lewis, Young. And then, let me give you a little bit. Let me give you one for the conversation. Aaron Taylor. And at most universities, Aaron Taylor's the best center to ever play in the program. Period. 2-time unanimous All-American. You would think that as you have the conversation of how elite Aaron Taylor is, that it's 2 handfuls of players who have ever been in that space. He happened to do it at a school where it had already been done. And you go, man, like we have to honor you, but those are don't you have to put him on the Mount Rushmore of centers? Don't you have to? Accept. And I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying accept the fact that, well, there's another one. What if, Aaron Graham played on what could have been the greatest team, possibly in front of the greatest quarterback, and then battled probably maybe one of the best defenses ever every day. And Aaron Taylor, 2 times, Aaron Graham, Remington, Novak. That's a full room of centers and a long legacy of centers. And no matter who you put in the room, in the greatness, in the elite room, you're not wrong because they're the best of the best. They were the best of their era. They were the best in a program where that thing matters, where that thing is measurable, where that thing is considered, it's watched. There's big eyes on the center position of the University of Nebraska. And then in 2000, Dominic Raiola, consensus All-America, bona fide bad man. Bona fide bad man. Legitimate All-American center. Snorting, fighting, physical, aggressive, high IQ, worked in tandem, great identifier of defenses in the space that he was in, great protector, and he was the pace setter. He set the physicality standard. He set the IQ standard of Nebraska football. And as a consensus All-American, wow. What a run that is for Nebraska football. You're still familiar, as fans, you're still familiar with the presence, the feeling, the execution level, the physicality level, the success level. In a history of great centers, and you've got recent centers drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL. And they have those are good centers, great centers. But they just weren't at the level of Graham, Raiola, Taylor, Trainowitz, Remington. Know that. Put your Mount Rushmore centers down in the comment section. And you're not wrong. There's no way you're wrong. But it's almost impossible to get right. That's the way that works. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate you. We will close this episode as we close them all with the 3 words that mean so much. Go Big Red.